Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here with us. About 30 years ago, when I was a student at Stony Brook University, I was undecided what I wanted to do, and I decided to get into political science because we had a leader in Albany that really intrigued me. He seemed like a superhero to me. He fought for people's rights. He had a real passion for them. His name was Mario Cuomo. God rest his soul. Once again, we have a vitality and leadership and a person who's got a passion for the people, again, in Albany. Again, good morning. My name is Ziad Ramadan. I'm the chair of the board of the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Educational Center. As the board's chair, I want to take the time to acknowledge someone whose legacy continues to inform us, and not just this institution, but our state as well. Right below this blue light, Malcolm X was fallen, but boy, has he gotten up. He's become a great icon in history for all of us as a voice of consciousness of human rights. The center honors the lives and legacies of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz by continuing to advance the causes of human rights and social justice. You know, change isn't easy. Malcolm knew that for sure, and we know that. But despite that difficulty, we always keep up the good fight. We're here today to learn about Governor Andrew Cuomo's opportunity agenda, his plan to continue the positive change that our state has made over the last 4 years and to make new strides from this year and beyond. I'm excited to have Governor Cuomo here to discuss further what he has planned for the year 2015 and how these guidelines can help create a better future for ourselves, our children, and the great state of New York. And we know we need that here in Washington Heights and Harlem. And just a real quick note, he may be the first governor to ever give a major speech here in Washington Heights and Northern Manhattan. So thank you very much, Mr. Governor. I'd like to introduce to you, from the great state of New York, our wonderful governor, Mr. Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, to Chairman Ramadan, I want to thank him very much for his kind introduction and for what he does, keeping this center alive. It's an important remembrance and, more importantly, an important vehicle going forward to do social justice, to remind us all that the battle continues. The battle continues. That equality is more of a journey than a destination. And we've made great progress over many years, but we also have much more to do. And this center is a tribute to that, and it's my pleasure to be here. It's my pleasure to be here with my colleagues from Albany, Senator Adriano Espaillat, who's here. Let's give him a round of applause. Assemblyman Guillermo Llanares, pleasure to be with you. We have Councilman Adonis Rodriguez, who's also with us. They're also my traveling buddies. We went down to the Dominican Republic together, so we go everywhere now together. And it is fitting that we are here today. And the chairman mentioned my father, who we lost just a little while ago, just about on New Year's. The Washington Heights, the plight of the new immigrants to New York was always my father's constant theme. That what New York was about at its best was a welcoming agency. And it opened its arms, and people came to New York, and New York was there for them. And New York believed in investing in the new immigrants and the new energy and the new talents. And it was an investment that was going to pay off not just for the individual, but also for society. So welcome people with open arms, invest in them, education, healthcare, housing, make them part of the family of New York, as this state had done for my father before and for his people when they came as poor immigrants from Italy. Somewhere along the way, we lost our dedication to that principle. And we're trying to get it back. And we're trying to get it back in this plan. This plan is a very bold and sweeping plan for the state of New York. And I wanted to talk to you about it. I've talked to the legislators about it. But I'll tell you, the voice that is more important than my voice to the legislators is your voice. Because your voice pulls the lever or fills in the little circle on the voting machines now. And they represent you. So let me go through the plan with you quickly, and I hope that you have an opinion. I hope you agree with some. You can disagree with some. I hope you agree with more than you disagree. But most importantly, that we have your voice in the discussion. I've been governor for 4 years, and this legislature, the Senate, that Senator Aspiata is part of, the Assembly, which Assemblyman Linares is part of, has had a past 4 years that has seen unprecedented progress. And almost everyone will say that. We have made great progress over the past 4 years. You look at any of the numbers, the unemployment rate was up near 9% 4 years ago. It's down to 5.8. We had some of the lowest credit ratings in the state. Credit ratings are now upstate, now higher than ever before. Upstate New York, which has been declining for decades, is now turned the corner and is actually coming back as an economic forces. We were spending more money, and taxes were going up, chasing people from the state, and we now have the lowest tax rate in 50 years. Property taxes were growing, and now we've capped them and froze them. Almost every newspaper has said we've made historic progress. And getting almost every newspaper to say anything in this town is very hard, as you know. So for them to all say we've made great progress is something special. So what's it about? For us, it's about restoring opportunity, right? Why do immigrants come here? Why do people from the Dominican Republic come here, Puerto Rico come here? For the opportunity. And for too many years, that opportunity was dwindling. And we have been revitalizing that spirit of opportunity. And now with this energy and momentum, our goal is to do even more. Once you can walk, then you run. Once you can trot, then you run faster. We've had a great 4 years. So I'm saying to my colleagues, let's take our performance to a new level. Because we can. Let's challenge ourselves and raise the bar even higher. And it's about economics, it's about education, it's about fairness, and it's about ethics reform. On economics, it is about creating jobs, especially jobs for young people, good, high-paying jobs, not just minimum wage jobs, but jobs that give people a career, and having those jobs in New York. That has to be the focus. We have done some things that have worked very well. We created 500,000 new jobs in this state over 4 years. 500,000 new jobs. That is the second highest job creation since the recession in the nation. We've beaten every other state but one, and we won't stop till we beat that state. But we're creating jobs. Why are we creating jobs? Because we've been reducing taxes. And people are no longer running from New York because the taxes were too high. Because that's what we did to ourselves. We got the taxes so high that people were saying, I can't afford to live here. I can't pay the rent, I can't pay the taxes. The businesses were saying, I can't afford to stay here. Small businesses, we were suffocating in the crib. We brought taxes down. The middle class, who have the hardest time in New York, we brought the tax rate down to the lowest level since 1953. How long ago is that? That's before I was born. That's how long ago. That's a long, long time. We brought the corporate taxes down to the lowest level since 1968, and the manufacturing tax back to the lowest level since 1917, because we want to get manufacturing jobs back. This year, I want to cut taxes on small business. Why? Small businesses are where the job growth is coming from today. You're not getting jobs, businesses that are coming in with 500 jobs. You're getting businesses that come in 10 jobs, 20 jobs, hairdressers, bodegas, little grocery stores, little service companies. And it's very hard to start a small business because you have all the regulations in New York, and it's very hard to get the finances. Cutting taxes on small businesses will send a signal to small business, stay here, we're with you. And if you're thinking about starting a new business, go ahead and do it because we just cut taxes. Right now, the tax rate on small business is 6.5%. I want to cut it down to 2.5%, which is the lowest rate in 100 years. We also need to invest in infrastructure. Infrastructure downstate are our airports. Vice President Biden flew into LaGuardia Airport a while ago. And Vice President Biden can be very frank and candid in his comments. It's one of the reasons we love him. And he flew into LaGuardia, and he said it was like flying into a third world country, flying into LaGuardia. That was a little harsh, and I took offense. But the general sentiment is right. LaGuardia and JFK have been under construction since I was a kid. I remember going to the airport the first time it was under construction. I go back now, it's still under construction. I think it's the same construction. I swear, I think it's the same guy who was there 20 years ago. I don't think anything has changed. We have to get them built. We have to get them built quickly. Airports now are phenomenal around the world. I mean, it's like flying into a resort destination. Some people never even leave the airport. They go to the airport, they do business, they shop, they stay in the hotel, and then they move on. So there's no reason why we shouldn't have world-class airports, and that's what we want to do with JFK and LaGuardia. We also have regional airports on Long Island and upstate New York that can take some of the traffic from JFK and LaGuardia if we plan it right so we can open up more flights. I also want to have a train that goes to LaGuardia. It makes no sense that you still have to take a car to LaGuardia Airport. We all talk about mass transportation. We can run a line from the number 7 subway line to connect to LaGuardia and finally have a train that goes to LaGuardia, and we want to make that happen also. We want to bring back the economy, but we want to make sure the economy is working for everyone, not just those people who are at the top. One of the other problems we have is real income inequality, where the rich keep getting richer and the middle class are stuck. One of the best ways we can do that is by raising the minimum wage. We raised it once already last year. I think we can raise it higher because it's not paying enough for families to be able to afford to live in Manhattan or New York. We want to raise it to $10.50 statewide, and the first time ever have a higher rate in New York City because New York City is more expensive, and raise it to $11.50 in New York City. We still have New Yorkers who go hungry. We want to add $4.5 million to our food pantries. We have an affordable housing crisis that is getting worse, that is not getting better. And housing is very simple. I've worked on it all my life. I started as a 20-something in a not-for-profit. I then became the head of housing for Bill Clinton for 8 years. Housing costs money. If you subsidize the housing, one way or the other, tax credits, give them land, cash grant, it's money. And if you pay for it, you can have affordable housing. And we want to pay $486 million, almost $500 million, to invest in the creation of affordable housing in New York. We have a chronic unemployment issue in this state, especially in this city, where young minority men and women, but especially men, are having trouble finding employment. When a 16 to 24-year-old can't find a job, the 16 to 24-year-old normally finds trouble. And hanging out in the neighborhood or hanging out on the street corner and falling into the wrong bunch of people always leads to a life of trouble. Get them jobs, get them training. We started a program last year, which is a job voucher, which says to private sector companies, if you hire a young minority, 16 to 24, primarily men, if you hire a young minority male and give them training in your job, we will subsidize the wage and the training. So a company pays, the company gives them a real full-time job and training, and the state subsidizes the training. We did this, and 20,000 young people got jobs. I want to double that to 40,000 jobs because it's a tremendous investment for the state. Now, the best way to help minorities, the best way to help women-owned businesses is through something called the MWBE program, Minority and Women Business Enterprise Program. Nobody really talks about it, but it is the single most important vehicle. Why? Same reason why Willie Sutton said when he was asked, why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. The MWBE program is where the money is, okay? We're going to invest $500 million in affordable housing, which is one of the largest amounts ever, $500 million. MWBE says we're going to take a certain percentage of the state contracts and set them aside just for minority business or just for women-owned businesses. When we started 4 years ago, the set-aside was 10%. $800 million in contracts set aside for minority-owned businesses or women-owned businesses. We then took it to 20% of all state contracts, which is $1.6 billion. We then took it to 25%, $2 billion that go to minority businesses and women-owned businesses, which means these businesses are now flourishing. They're hiring more young people, more minorities. They're giving them a career, a real infrastructure. They then find other clients. This year, we want to take it to the highest level in the nation, which is going to be 30%, $2.4 billion, roughly a third of all state contracts going to minority and women-owned businesses. This will make a significant difference. And the best way to rebuild the community is from within the community. I used to do community development work, and it was always best when it was organic and from within. We want to invest in not-for-profits in the community. We want to invest in faith-based organizations that are in the community. Very often, the strongest community development organization in the community is the church, or the mosque, or the temple, because they have roots. We're going to hire a great assemblyman named Karim Kamara, who's also a pastor. He's going to be joining the administration. We're going to have $50 million, and we're going to invest in community development, faith-based organizations all across the state. The second item on the agenda is education. Now, education is something that we talk about every year. And every politician gets up and says, it's about education, it's about the children. And the truth is, we're going backwards in terms of education. We're going backwards. And we have an education system that in many ways has a duality to it. There's one education system for the rich, and there's another education system for the poor. Chairman mentioned my father. My father came poor. My father went to public schools. But at that time, you went to a public school, you got a great education. And he then went to high school, and he then went to college, and he became governor because the public schools got him there. I don't know that the same is true today. And if you're born in the wrong community with the wrong zip code and you go to the wrong public school, you can get left behind in the first grade and never catch up. And that is antithetical to what this state was supposed to be about. It was the exact opposite. You come here and we invest in you and you can grow. And it's been like this for a long, long time. And the bureaucracy around education is now so strong that the bureaucracy runs the system. And you challenge that bureaucracy, And they're going to come to crush you. And they are a multi-billion-dollar bureaucracy. So even in cases where you see total failure, you see these politicians stand up and pander to the bureaucracy because that's political strength for them. And my point is, I'm done pandering to the bureaucracy. Let's think about the student for a change. And let's have the courage to make some dramatic reform. What do you need? It's very simple. You need the best teachers in the classroom. You have to close the failing schools, and you have to invest in early education. Those are the three rules. Very simple formula, very hard to enact. Recruit the best teachers. Everybody will say we're not getting good enough teachers going into teaching. Here's my idea to recruit the best teachers. If you really believe it, put your money where your mouth is. If a young person will give us 5 years as a public school teacher and they're a top graduate, we will pay their college tuition 100%. You believe in teachers? That will get you good teachers in the classroom. For the existing teachers, we need a real teacher evaluation system. We now have teacher evaluation systems. It was President Obama's reform. They're going into states all across the country. Some are working better, some are working worse. But it's just what it sounds like. Every teacher has an evaluation system. For those teachers who have high grades on the evaluation, I would give them a bonus to incentivize the performance. For those teachers who are struggling, we would get them help and counseling and support services. But for those teachers who are doing poorly, consistently, for a period of years, I would remove the bad teachers from the classroom because this was not a teacher protection program. It's a student education program, right? Now, first, we have to get an accurate teacher evaluation system because we're just starting, and we left it up to the local school districts and the union to negotiate it, and it's just not accurate. Our high school students, 38% are college ready, but the teachers, 98.7% are rated effective. How can you have 38% of the students ready for school, but 98% of the teachers were effective? 3rd to 8th graders, 30% are proficient in English, but 99% of the teachers are rated effective. It can't be. 3rd to 8th graders in math, 35%, but 98% of the teachers are perfect. So what they're saying is we have great, great, great teachers, perfect, 98, 99. But our kids are really substandard because they can't be taught. That's not the truth. The evaluations are inflated because they're negotiated school district by school district with the union. And we need a fair teacher evaluation system. And I want it fair and accurate for everyone. The teacher deserves a fair evaluation system, but the students also deserve a fair evaluation system. And once we have a fair evaluation system, top performers, state will give them a $20,000 bonus on top of their salary. You want to incentivize a teacher to work harder, to stay after school, to spend time, give them a bonus. $20,000 paid for by the state. For those who need support services because they're in the middle, the state will pay for a teacher improvement plan more extensive than anything that's ever been done before. Get them counseling, get them training, etc. But for a teacher who is ineffective, despite help for 3 years, we must protect the students by removing that chronically failing teacher from the classroom. That is the plan. Right now, you can't get a failing teacher out of a classroom. It is so hard to do by the regulations that most school districts will tell you they don't even try. That's why in New York City you always read the stories about the teachers in the rubber rooms because they can't really fire a teacher, so they just keep moving them around the district. Now, the teachers union is opposed to this, and the teachers union says, I don't like teachers. Look, I love and respect teachers. My mother was a school teacher. She taught 2nd and 4th grade. I love my mother. I love teachers. That's not what this is about, you know. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't demonize the person who is telling the facts that you don't want to hear. These are facts, and we all know that the education system hasn't been working and hasn't been working for a long time. And don't tell me that I don't value teachers. First time ever, $20,000 bonus for high performers. First time ever. I love teachers. Full scholarship for college for teachers. Never offered before. I love teachers. Teachers who are struggling, more support services than ever before. And 3 years of ineffective ratings before you're fired. In what job do you get 3 years of ineffective ratings before you're fired? I've never heard of such a thing. I got criticized the other day. Somebody came up to me, an assemblyman in upstate, and said, you're giving them 3 years on top of everything else? I said, well, I love teachers. He said, you love teachers too much. And the state will fund more for education than it has ever funded in the history of the state of New York. More money, more scholarships, more bonuses, more support services. And what it really is about is saying to the bureaucracy, our education system is not there to grow the bureaucracy. It's not the teachers and the principals and the bus drivers and the janitors and the support staff and the union officials. It was about the students. And somewhere in all of this, we forgot about the students. And we became more responsive to the lobbyists of the bureaucracy than the students. And that's what has to change, and that has to change this year. Second, we have to fix chronically failing schools. You want to talk about a scandal? This is it. Failing schools that we knew were failing, and we continue to send children to failing schools. 9 out of 10 students in failing schools are minority or poor. Minority or poor. What would Malcolm X say about that? Is that a coincidence? There are 178 failing schools in New York State. There are 12 failing schools in Manhattan. Now listen to this. Of these 12, 9 have been failing for 4 years. All right? Which means you know the school is failing, and you just keep sending students to that failing school. Like you are condemning them by sending them to a school that you know less than half will graduate. And there they are. And there are the representatives that represent those schools. And I'm sure your representatives want it over because they don't want to be sending kids to schools where they know those kids are going to be failed. 3 of the schools have been failing for an entire decade. 10 years of failing schools. Over the last 10 years, 250,000 children, including 18,000 in Manhattan, went through these failing schools while government did nothing. That is the Albany scandal, in my opinion. That's the corrupt government, in my opinion. Because the failing schools were protected by the bureaucracy and by the union, everybody was afraid to do anything. So we sacrificed our children's education on the altar of the educational bureaucracy. That's what has to change. Today, as we sit here, 4,000 students in Manhattan's failing schools. As we sit here, 4,000 students. It has to end. It has to end this year. The plan is very simple. If a school fails for 3 years, do something different. Do something different. Insanity is expecting same occurrence and expecting a different outcome. If the school is failing, just don't think by magic it's going to change. Do something different. Let a not-for-profit run it, let another school district run it, let a turnaround expert run it. I don't care. But do something different. State of Massachusetts had the same problem. They passed a model, which is the model we want to accept. Bring in different management. Graduation rates increased from 52 to 67. Math proficiency, dropout rates decreased, and it was supported by the union. Randy Weingarten, who's now the national head, supported the Massachusetts model. Well, let us do it here. If it's supported by the national union head in Massachusetts, tell our union people in New York that we're going to do it here, but we have to stop the failing schools and forget the politics and forget the union's bureaucracy. Third, invest in early education. The younger you get the children into school, the better. We're moving on universal pre-K for 4-year-olds. We now want to start universal pre-K for 3-year-olds. First state in the nation that would do it. 3-year-olds, their minds are open. We want everyone to have access to education. We want to pass the education tax credit and the DREAM Act, which would give young people, children of immigrant families, access to education and resources. We also propose to extend mayoral control in New York City. And this is a bold reform, but as I said before, we'd increase the budget to 4.8%, which would be the highest goal ever. In terms of fairness for all and social justice, we want to raise the age, restore confidence, and have a sexual assault policy. Raise the age is this. New York is one of only 2 states in the United States that treats 16 and 17-year-olds as adults for criminal law purposes, which means a 16-year-old is convicted, they go to state prison with some of the hardest criminals that we have in this state. There is nothing that is going to be rehabilitative about that for a 16 or a 17-year-old. They are not going to come out. We want to raise the age of criminal responsibility to get 16 and 17-year-olds out of adult prisons and have juvenile facilities for the 16 and 17-year-olds where we can actually help them. We had a situation in New York a few months ago, the Eric Garner case on Staten Island. That case pointed to systemic problems in the criminal justice system. And just because it's not on the front pages doesn't mean we should forget about it. And it wasn't just New York, it was Ferguson, it was Los Angeles, it was all across the country. It's a problem in perception, and it's a problem in reality. The community and the police have to have mutual trust and mutual respect. And that trust and that respect has broken down. And that has to be resolved. And it's not going to be resolved by just wishing it goes away. We have a 7-point justice agenda that we think does that. Number 1, a statewide reconciliation commission on police-community relations. Recruit more minorities into the law enforcement so law enforcement looks more like the communities that they're serving. Provide race and ethnic data so we know exactly what police actions are being taken. Keep the police safe. They should have vests, body cameras, etc. District attorneys should have the right to issue a grand jury report. And the governor should have the right to appoint an independent monitor. So if we believed an injustice was done and there was no indictment, I can appoint a monitor to go review the case. And if there was an injustice, we'll do a second grand jury and we'll make sure that justice is done. But people have to have their confidence renewed. The DAs support this proposal. The NAACP supports it. Civil Liberties Union supports it. Justice League, great activists, Harry Belafonte, Jay-Z, musicians, Russell Simmons, everyone. Another problem that hasn't gotten enough attention is sexual assault of women on campuses. roughly 1 out of 5 women will be sexually assaulted on a college campus. New York now has more schools being investigated for sexual assault than any state in the nation. This is a disgrace, and it's something we don't like to talk about because it embarrasses us. But it's also unacceptable. We should follow a program that we put in place in the state university system, and we did this last year. It's working well. And there were 2 points. Number one, both people to a sexual relation must affirmatively consent to it, what they call the affirmative consent rule. Both people have to say yes. The second rule is if a woman believes she was a victim of a sexual assault, she has a right to go to the police. Now, you would say, well, that's common sense. Actually, it's not. The campuses want to keep it quiet, and the campuses don't want it in the newspaper because it's bad publicity. So the campuses say, well, this is an academic matter and we'll handle it internally. And they put together a panel of professors, and they listen to the woman, and they listen to the man, and there are 2 stories, and nothing happens. This is not an academic matter. The woman believes she was raped. That is a criminal matter. And the way we handle criminal matters is with the criminal law. And what's happening is the number of rapes are going up, but it's a very small number of men who are doing it over and over and over. The recidivism rate is going up. Why? Because you're not convicting them the first time. So they're doing it a second time and a third time and a fourth time. That woman has a right to go to the local police, the state police, the city police, federal police, but she has a right to go to the police. She didn't do anything wrong. She was the victim. There's nothing to be hidden. There's no shame for the woman. If she's victim of a crime, she has a right to go to the police. I want to pass this law in the state of New York, and you will see this law go across the nation like wildfire through dry grass, and that's exactly what we should do. We have more homeless today than ever before. I started in my 20s building housing for the homeless. It was supposed to be a temporary problem. It was going to be finished in 2 years, and the numbers are only going up. Like housing, you have to invest in it. We want to invest $400 million, which is a 20% increase in homelessness. And the last issue is ethics. We have done great stuff in the government, and I am so proud of what we've accomplished over the past 4 years. And I take my hat off to Senator Espaillat, and I take my hat off to Assemblyman Linares. They have had a better 4 years than in modern political history. But there's a shadow on everything we've done, which is these scandals that keep happening in Albany. And every couple of weeks you read about another scandal, another arrest. That has to end once and for all, because it taints everything that we do. And rather than people feeling good about government and having confidence in government, they can't because they're still reading about these scandals. And they're schizophrenic. I have people come up to me and say, Governor, I don't know which to believe. You're doing great stuff, but then how come so many people are still getting into trouble for such crazy ethical problems? We have to clean it up once and for all. It's never going to stop until we clean it up. This will dog us forever. It is the easiest story to write in the newspaper, corrupt government, corrupt government. They love to write that story. We have to make sure we give them nothing to write about. And that's by passing the simplest, toughest ethics reform once and for all. Campaign finance disclosure, pension forfeiture for legislators, legislators' per diems to the actual and necessary expenses, no use of campaign monies for personal expenses, and what I call ultimate disclosure. Ultimate disclosure is this. Almost every case you see, by the way, for the past 50 years, this goes back to my father, is a part-time legislator who's also a lawyer, because you can be a part-time legislator and a lawyer. The lawyer has clients. You don't know who the clients are. and the clients are not disclosed. And it turns out that a legislator had a client who was really paying them for their public position. So really, the client was paying them for how they would vote on a bill or for access to state government, and that's a conflict, and that's illegal, and now they go to jail. That has been going on for 50 years. Last case with the last assemblyman. Same case 50 years ago. My solution is very simple. Either have no outside income, and I would support a pay increase, and just say it's a full-time job. Or if you want to do it part-time and you still want to have a law firm, fine. But you have to disclose every client and tell us who you're representing and what you're doing for them, because you've lost the trust of the people. And they're not going to say, I take your word for it. And until that stops, you're going to see these prosecutors bringing these cases, you're going to see these newspapers reporting on these cases, and we will never have confidence until we get this done. That, I think, is the single most important thing we can get done this year. We got 4 budgets passed on time in a row. I'm all excited about that. But this year, we have to be able to say, you can trust us. Because, by the way, with our performance, if we resolve this issue of trust, and they trust the state legislature, wow, there's nothing we can't do, right? If you're really proud of who you elected, and you feel good about the state legislature, there's nothing that we can't do. This plan, if we enact it, we lower taxes, especially on small businesses, it'll create jobs, transform education, it's safer and fairer, and the government will be more trustworthy. But, my friends, here's the caution. It's a lot of change. And change is very, very hard. Change is hard individually. Change is hard. To change anything in your own life is hard. Married couple sits at the breakfast table. One looks at the other one and says, you know, we need to make changes. They mean you need to make changes. They're fine. You are the problem. We want to stay right where we are, doing just what we're doing, because control works for us. And we don't want to change. This is change. And this is a lot of really dramatic change. And it is very hard. And what I'm asking these legislators to do is something harder than they have done in 50 years. I say, go take on that education bureaucracy. Go get them. Don't be afraid of the unions. They say, are you kidding? That's a powerful bureaucracy. Largest political donor in the state of New York. Who is it? Largest political donor. Teachers Union. Go take on the teachers union. Largest political donor in the state of New York. Don't be afraid. Be brave. Largest political donor. How about the students? They're in your district. They're your students. They're your cousins. They're your nieces. They're your nephews. Largest political donor in the state. It's hard. It's hard. Tell your colleagues who are lawyers, they have to stop, they have to disclose, because it's hurting everybody. They're my colleagues. I know them 15, 20 years. They'll never talk to me again. Well, you have to do it for the good of the institution. But it's hard. It is all hard. But you will never solve a problem you are unwilling to admit. And if you want to solve that problem, you're going to have to change, and change is hard. But if you don't change, you're going to continue the status quo. And what is the status quo? You have condemned students in your district to failing schools, year after year after year. You're going to endure more stories and more prosecutors, scandal, 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 scandal. That's why change is necessary. And I believe with everything we've done over the past 4 years, we step up and we do this, we're going to take this state to a place it's never been. I'm not talking about going back to the old days. I'm talking about going to a higher place that we've never reached before. We have shown how much we can do in the past 4 years. And we have our momentum. And we're in the groove. And we're hitting the ball. And it's working. We are ready to tackle this problem. And we are ready to bring this state to a new level. But I need your help. Because as I said before, I'm talking to them till I'm blue in the face. Senator and assemblyman, they can give this speech as well as I can now because they've heard it 800 times from me. Your voice is the voice that has to be heard because your voice matters more. New York is moving. Let's keep it moving, and let's take it to a place we've never been before. Thank you for listening.